I mean, in today's procurement, what we see is that, there's always allegations that it's people who are politically connected who get things. I don't know if that's the truth in our sort of environment, but fortunately now, there's a lot of Black people who are experienced, who've done this, bent their fingers, can now develop and don't need a Mr. van der Merwe to hold their hand. So times have changed. I was just simply reflecting in terms of the past to say, perhaps we could have done more, delivered more quality housing or less if we had used all the skills we had in the country, because South Africa is not only made of Black people. So innovation in housing is a very difficult thing. People were just uncomfortable living in a container development. But once people experience it and live in it and feel that, it feels just like a normal unit, the insulation is right, the quality of the space is right, people then warm to it. If you are trying to target a low to moderate income earner, how do you place them in a place that's central like a CBD so that they are able to get to pre-taxi rank quickly, so to connect to Sentin for a job, or to connect just using one taxi or one bus to their place of work, and can also access entertainment? How do we turn these inner city buildings, which mainly were office buildings or light industrial buildings, into quality residential units? We obviously look for a project that makes financial sense. We fund against the ability of the underlying cash flows of the project to carry all its obligations. Firstly, it must carry the obligation of paying for rates, taxes to the city, utility consumptions, making sure that you can pay your insurance, security, maintenance, etc., before you can service our loan. And then we say, after you've serviced those things, how much is left in the underlying cash flows of that property to service our loan?
All right, welcome to It's More Than Just Money, where we dive into conversations with industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and change makers who are shaping the future of business and investment in South Africa and abroad. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Lusanda Netshitenzhe, a visionary leader with a wealth of experience in corporate governance, compliance, and transformation. Lusanda has held prominent leadership roles in various sectors, making a significant impact through her work in championing diversity, ethical leadership, and socio-economic development. Currently, she is making waves at TUHF, an organization that is redefining entrepreneurship and property investment in urban areas by providing crucial funding and support for budding entrepreneurs. Her commitment to sustainable development, alongside her advocacy for empowering communities, has made her one of the most respected voices in the South African business landscape. I am honored to welcome Lusanda to our platform. It's her first time today. We shared a stage the other day as we were both judges at the Investor of the Year Awards with Sapin. We'll be exploring her remarkable career, her leadership philosophies, and how TUHF is playing a transformative role in funding and supporting South African entrepreneurs. You've got a vast CV, and I couldn't put everything into one thing. How does it feel sitting here listening to all these remarkable things being said about you? Welcome to the platform, actually.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and obviously for those kind introductions. I'm not sure how it feels. It feels like I'm old. That's how it feels. Feels like I've tried to do things that are meaningful to me, that I am passionate about. And housing people has always been a thing from university, actually. My thesis for my first master's degree was in housing. So I followed that, and as they say, the rest is history. So I've just what do they say? Do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Sort of feels like that sometimes.
So it doesn't feel like you're working.
Sometimes.
So you said for your first master's degree, you did a thesis on housing people.
Yeah.
So how many master's degrees do you have?
I have 2 master's degrees.
And then the second one, what was the thesis on that one?
It was in business. So it was a master's in business leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really on issues of governance and corporate governance and ethical leadership, which is something that has become very important in our country.
Yes.
As we know, we have this unfortunate cancer of corruption and poor governance in our important institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And ethical governance is something that I believe will ensure that your daughter sitting there has a future in this country. And
Yes.
we have a responsibility today as leaders to make sure that we do things right, not for us, but for the generations that follow.
But what prompted that? And I mean, having held various roles of leadership, what would you say is the one thing that led you to have the desire to actually focus on corporate governance as one of the things that you tackle in your career? Can you walk us through that, especially when it comes to transformation?
Yeah, I think, when you've worked in the space that I work in, property, housing is an asset that is not cheap to construct. So there's always the temptation to divert money to things that are not intended for the objective of providing quality housing.
Mm.
So I've worked, both in the private sector, which is where I'm at now, and in almost like a parastatal of government in a way, because it was a program between the European Union and the South African government called the Support Program for Social Housing, which today most people know as, SHRA has come out of that. SPSH and SHF in those days used to work together just to advance social housing. And, my first career in housing was in cooperative housing, which was also government funded, even though it was an NGO. So there was a lot of subsidy money coming from government to subsidize obviously the construction of these properties. And you can always see that sometimes the end product and the money that went in doesn't always tally. And you ask yourself, what would have happened and how many more people could we have housed if all the subsidies were used correctly? And I don't think in those days it was really corruption. It was sometimes, I think, ignorance and money just getting wasted, during construction. So there was a lot of wasted costs because we were learning. Sometimes, you repeat the plumbing twice because you didn't do it right the first time.
Yes.
And you could have opted to use a plumber who knew what he was doing from the first instance. And sometimes, this idea of transformation and transformation at every cost is not always useful, because what we tend to do is that we will say, I want to take Lusanda because she's a black female to develop this. But maybe Lusanda doesn't yet have, and I use the word yet on purpose, doesn't have the skills and the expertise yet to develop the scale of product that you wanted to develop. And you should be able to trust in the abilities of the ones. And back in the day, obviously it was early 2000s, late 90s, the idea of using white men to get involved in these projects was anti-transformation. But maybe in that I don't know, that short-sightedness, we lost the opportunity to actually insist that those white engineers, those white quantity surveyors, those white contractors should have a clear program of passing skills to the black entrepreneur, female or male, so that they are able to then learn and do the right things moving forward. So I think we lost a little bit of money just by being rigid in our need for transformation. And I'm all for transformation, as you would have seen in my career.
It makes me wonder that what you are saying now, is it a new view, or have you always held that view that bring in people that are experienced even though they are white? Because I know you are for diversity and inclusion. So I'm sure back in the day you advocated for transformation, right? But now you're saying there was a bit of short-sightedness in how governance was done back in the day, where even people that were not primarily Black but had the skills should have been allowed to actually do the work.
Yes. I think that, it's obviously sometimes hindsight, they say is perfect science.
Best teacher what?
Best teacher. And obviously back in the days, most of us were a little bit too activist in our need for change. We wanted to make sure that, a young Black company that started construction was given the opportunity to do that.
True.
And you push for that, irrespective of whether or not they could deliver. And I'm just speaking broadly, not just for myself. I think for all of us who were involved in those days, you ticked the boxes when you were seen to be using a Black contractor, a Black structural engineer, a Black architect, whatever, and all I'm saying is that perhaps the lesson back then would have been a better program that forces some sort of skills transfer in a way that's managed properly. Because most of my white colleagues that I know, in fact, were always willing to share their knowledge and make sure that, they can transfer skills. But it then became almost competition in that they felt cut out of the process. And that's why you ended up having these issues of fronting and people using Khumalo and Sons. And when you look at Khumalo and Sons, it's actually only Mr. van der Merwe and his sons. Khumalo and Sons is just a name, just because they wanted access to contracts. But if we had managed it properly, you say, no, Mr. van der Merwe, you don't have to be Khumalo and Sons. You can be yourself, but partner with a proper Khumalo and Sons and transfer skills in a way that's managed and that has an end date of saying at what point are we then comfortable that the actual Khumalos are gaining the skills. I mean, in today's procurement, what we see is that, there's always allegations that it's people who are politically connected who get things. I don't know if that's the truth in our sort of environment, but fortunately now, there's a lot of Black people who are experienced, who've done this, bent their fingers, can now develop and don't need a Mr. van der Merwe to hold their hand. So times have changed. I was just simply reflecting in terms of the past to say, perhaps we could have done more, delivered more quality housing for less if we had used all the skills we had in the country, because South Africa is not only made of Black people. Diversity doesn't mean women and young people only. Diversity means Black, Indian, white, Chinese, green, yellow, purple. Use all the skills you have and the resources you have to get the best product, the fastest time, at the best quality. And sometimes we miss that.
I feel like you're saying we lost a lot of skilled people because of that. And because of that, we also lost money that could have been used for more housing, but we're using it fixing some mistakes.
Yeah.
But based on that, in terms of...
We're like learning on the job, which sometimes is the best way to learn, but sometimes it comes at a cost.
It's very expensive to learn on the job. So when you look at innovation and regulatory measures that need to be in place when you do work like this, how do you balance that to be able to have that innovation that says we are willing to take the risks, even if somebody doesn't know certain things, but we need to be able to have the right people at the same time? Where have you found the sweet spot now?
Yeah. So innovation in housing is a very difficult thing in that, you're speaking about a place that needs to be safe for human habitation. So as you know, for instance, conversations around using alternative technology to build, use different sort of bricks instead of the conventional bricks that we have. It doesn't always appeal to people simply because a house is a place that needs to be long-term and durable for the long term. So you find that the ideas of innovation take time to settle and filter in a housing space simply because we are very afraid to take the chances. But I think that we are also short-sighted when it comes to that, because these days, innovation is not driven by people who are inexperienced. people who come with these technologies actually have tested it in different environments, and we might be able to deliver more and quicker and cheaper housing for more people if we were open-minded about innovative solutions that are out there. But because we haven't tried them and we are afraid to test the unknown, we are losing the opportunity. So I think for me, it's not the same that, back in the day when we were starting to build housing, we were trying to use people who were still learning from a professional point of view in terms of the skills that they needed to have acquired to be able to build these structures. Is different from saying use someone who's already been in the space, but is now trying to test a new methodology or a new product that could give you the same thing, but maybe quicker, better for the environment, etc. I don't know. I mean, sometimes they are selling, people are just selling for marketing purposes that, it's noise proof, it's fireproof, you can build it for half, it's quicker, you can build it for half what you are currently building it for. But the point is, we won't know until we try some of these.
But why aren't we trying?
I think people are just, it's a mindset issue. I mean, I know that when we funded one client, I think it was called Drivelines, the project.
Drivelines,
in Jeffrey's Town. In Maboneng. It was a container housing. Yes. Took long to fill that development with tenants because people were just uncomfortable living in a container development. But once people experience it and live in it and feel that, it feels just like a normal unit, the insulation is right, the quality of the space is right, people then warm to it. And if we had done more and more of that.
That was done by perpetuity?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was done by Jonathan Liebman and them. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that if we had been brave enough to try more of those things, of those types of developments, one after the other, probably the market would have had better appetite for it. Yes. But because we then were frightened by the response from the market and people not really taking up those units, we were, at least for us as financiers, we were less likely to fund another Drivelines. Yes. But I think sometimes with innovation is try the first one, next month do the other one, just change a little bit of this, and then next month another. And then that way it cycles quicker and better into the market. But I mean, up to today, I have people coming to us and presenting a different type of brick that we can use that's cheaper and quicker. And I know those conversations usually take long with our clients. They're always, I'm not sure I want to do that. I'll rather go the traditional route. So I'm not sure what that is about. But I do think that it's a mindset issue. Maybe it's an education thing. Maybe the guys who are innovating should also have a big drive on educating the public about the benefits of these alternatives. Because over time, the planet and the environment will need us to do things differently. I mean, if you just look at KZN, the floods that are happening, snow recently, yes. It shows you climate is changing and things are changing, and we need to start treating our environment differently and doing things in a more durable and environmentally friendly way. And if I to believe the innovators, they are saying these alternative building technologies are more friendly to the environment. But I don't know, simply because we haven't tested enough of that. And I'm just willing to be one of the guinea pigs who goes in en masse and say, how do we test more and more of these technologies to see if they can deliver on what they're promising?
But for South Africa to actually transform from an innovation point of view, it simply means that there has to be more of those risks that entrepreneurs are willing to take, but they can't take without the support. So when you look at it, what then would be the best solution when it comes to balancing the two, making sure that we've got entrepreneurs, we are nurturing entrepreneurs that are willing to take the risks, but at the same time, we are providing the institutional support that's required to foster entrepreneurship in that end?
Yeah. I don't know. As I say, I think it's education. It's about consumer education firstly, because the entrepreneur can't come with a product that the market is not going to take up. So yes. I think that it's important that we push that because if you have a pool of tenants who are sitting saying, I'm willing to pay my rent for a unit that's built with alternative materials, and we have more and more of those voices coming out, I'm sure entrepreneurs will then respond to the market appropriately. So I think that there's need to educate consumers of housing as to these innovations. Us as financiers respond to the market. We finance what is sustainable in the market and can give us the repayment profile that we expect. So if we're going to finance a development that's going to stay empty for 6 months simply because people are not comfortable,
to test the new product.
It's a risk that, so I think it should start with some mindset shift from a consumer and entrepreneurs testing that consumers are willing to take that. But importantly, the innovators, the ones who are coming up with these ideas, should show the research that they've done that says that this thing is acceptable in the market and we've tested it here and there and that. But it's a chicken and egg, because the innovators are going to say, but we can't test it if nobody's financing us to develop it.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that.
What do you think are the notable challenges that you've seen, as well as the notable impact that you've seen in the space?
Yeah. I haven't done enough of these developments to know. I know that, for instance, right now with the pressure of load shedding that we had in the recent past, there was a lot of move towards putting alternative energy sources. So like solar and everything that used to be a luxury now becomes a standard in a development. So I think that market pressures sometimes force innovation. So I don't know what market pressure can come to say no longer use brick, use this alternative building technology. So if something like that comes up, I'm sure there'll be take up. But as we know, with electricity, people are starting to put alternatives for heating water, for lighting their units, etc. Now, with water becoming an issue, I think we're going to start seeing innovation coming in that space where a lot of people are drilling boreholes in their properties to ensure that they have alternative water supply. But a borehole is apparently not friendly to the environment. I don't know what is an alternative friendly thing, but apparently grey water systems where you recycle for flushing toilets, use grey water, maybe that's something that's going to become standard over time. Cape Town, when they had day zero, we saw that those innovations were coming in Cape Town from the water perspective, and it seems to have carried on even post those scares around day zero. So I think that even with actual building technology, when we start seeing that using cement or using conventional brick or using conventional, I don't know, whatever we use in building an actual structure, only then will we start seeing innovations really taking hold.
It feels to me that you are saying tough times produce innovation.
Yes.
Right. But TUHF is known for financing entrepreneurs, especially in the property space. Can you tell us more about TUHF's mission and how it supports entrepreneurs who want to invest in the urban areas?
Yeah. So
you can couple that with how tough times are producing innovation and how entrepreneurs can actually join TUHF's mission.
Yeah. So TUHF started in 2003. So we are 21 years old now. And even back in the day...
You're almost Alex's age. How old are you, Alex?
So even Alec. Back in the day, we were doing something that was almost against the market. So everyone was moving out of the CBD because they were afraid that it was getting redlined. Banks were not really financing in CBDs. Hillbrow was now a place that was feared, etc. And we felt the need to regenerate. So innovation was always part of our DNA, to say, how do we take spaces that are almost feared by others, but we know that they have a real need from the end user who wants convenience. Because if you look at a person who wants to live in an affordable housing unit, affordable housing is not about the unit itself, the rent you pay and the electricity consumption in that unit. It's about how you are able to move from that base to get to a place of work, to get to a place of entertainment without incurring further costs around transport. So inner cities were an important node for us to say, if you are trying to target a low to moderate income earner, how do you place them in a place that's central like a CBD so that they are able to get to pre-taxi rank quickly, so to connect to Sentin for a job, or to connect just using one taxi or one bus to their place of work, and can also access entertainment. So we were investing in regenerating the inner cities. So we needed entrepreneurs who were innovative in their approach to say, how do we turn these inner city buildings, which mainly were office buildings or light industrial buildings, into quality residential units? So that in itself was an innovation, in that we were using existing infrastructure and repurposing it for a new need or a new use, which was residential. So that was always us saying, if you are ready as an entrepreneur to take the chance on the inner city, we are here to back you. We are here to ensure that we are able together to walk this road, to turn around. If you walk around our office, you will see on the walls it's written, we see potential where others see decline. We see possibilities where others think this is a no-go zone. So innovation has always been part of our DNA from that point of view. So that's why, new things that are coming up. I mean, that's why we tried Driveline when Jonathan came and wanted financing for containers of multi-story containers. It was, I remember at Credit Committee, we were all like, what is this now? How is this going to
funding
work?
shacks now.
Yeah, are we funding vertical shacks? But we were open-minded enough and entrepreneurial enough as a funder to say, actually, let's walk this road with this client and see where this takes us. And as I say, the lessons from that one project meant that we're now a little bit reluctant to do the next one. But conversions in the inner city, we did one and then it worked, and then we did the next and we did the next. Same with now having moved to the townships. Clients came to us and say, you are funding in inner cities. We are doing the same thing in townships. Can you extend that sort of financing for us to develop similar developments in townships? And because of our entrepreneurial nature and our passion for innovating and trying new things, we thought, why not? We are now in townships and we are funding, and we are actually seeing that the enterprising spirit of people living in townships remains untapped in South Africa. And there's much more that we all can do in supporting the growth of townships.
So what is the criteria that TUHF actually looks for when they fund the entrepreneurs?
We look for someone who has passion for quality housing. So you have to want, your thing is called, it's more than just money. We want somebody who knows that it's more than just money. It's about the impact of affordable housing, of quality housing, of accessibility for your tenants, so that when your tenants are happy and live in your development for longer and you have less churn, you have better chances of making money. So that money comes after doing the right things, maintaining your property, making sure that it's secure, making sure that, tenants, we always get our tenants or tenants of our clients in the building saying, I feel safe in the building more than outside when I walk into the street to go to Checkers. And now we're starting to say in inner cities, how do we start getting involved in not only fixing the building, but ensuring that our clients contribute to urban management around their buildings so that their tenants can walk to Checkers and buy bread without being scared. As you know, inner cities are known for crime and grime. So we look for someone who has the passion for developing these areas into sustainable neighborhoods. We obviously look for a project that makes financial sense. We fund against the ability of the underlying cash flows of the project to carry all its obligations. Firstly, it must carry the obligation of paying for rates, taxes to the city, utility consumptions, making sure that you can pay your insurance, security, maintenance, etc., before you can service our loan. And then we say, after you've serviced those things, how much is left in the underlying cash flows of that property to service our loan. Only then we will look at it. So the property must be able to wash its own face. It must be able to not have to rely on the entrepreneur's other sources of income to run it. And obviously we look for character. We look for entrepreneurs who are passionate about what they are doing, but are committed to doing the right thing. So there's a difference. I've always said to my colleagues, there's a difference with someone who has ability to pay vis-a-vis someone who has a willingness to pay. So you might find that the property is able to pay all its obligations, including the loan from us. But if the entrepreneur that you are backing, the character that you are backing, doesn't have willingness to pay, he will default because he has other priorities. He wants to go and buy a Mercedes Benz or whatever he wants to do before he services the obligations of the property business. So you need to look for a character that is, stable. So we look for things like, what has been your track record in being consistent in things that you do? How long you've stayed in the same job? We even sometimes look at how many times you've divorced because that tells you about character,
Yeah.
your ability to hold relationships, your relationship to money. So we look at your bank statement, how many returned debit orders, because that's telling, so sometimes you might find that your credit score is acceptable. So you don't have any, you're not blacklisted or anything like that. But when you look at the person's bank statement, they are taking from Paul to pay Peter, from Lusanda to pay Pikile, that's more telling than a credit score. So we look at that, at just your ability to hold relationships and your ability to service your commitments are consistent. But we also understand that human beings are human. Sometimes things happen and that causes, plans not to go the way that someone would have hoped. So we ask the questions, what led to this issue? In your credit record, we see that you have 9 months of not servicing X. And the first response you give that is honest, that says, I actually let the ball down because I did 1, 2, 3, and 4, and this is what I'm doing to resolve it, is usually more convincing and more, what can I say? It's something for us that's stronger than someone who comes and says, I'm not sure, I'll go and check. It must be a mistake. You already know that there's a character issue, because there's no way you wouldn't know that you have a judgment on your account. And you have people come and say, I didn't know I have that judgment. But it's there on your credit record from 3 years ago. How come you don't know? But someone who comes up front and say, I have 2 judgments. I was a student. I made bad decisions. I took a jet account and I didn't have enough pocket money for my parents to pay it. I ended up being handed over. And they say it without you asking. You are more likely to want to work with that person to try and resolve that because they're upfront about the issues and their willingness to resolve them. So it tells you how they will treat it, because, we fund for 15 years. So our loans are for 15 years. So building the thing for the property for the 3 up to 9 months it takes to build a property is just an event that happens, but the 15-year relationship after the property is let and tenanted, and the ability of that client to meet their commitments and be consistent and be able to communicate early, because sometimes in the 15 years something happens, you're not able to service your obligation that month because you needed to go and fix some damn thing. I don't know, there's a leak, you need to waterproof, and you come up front and say, this month I'm going to need grace because I have this and that and I don't have reserves. So, that person, you are more likely to be able to work with them to do the next deal and the next deal because they are upfront and they communicate proactively.
So entrepreneurship, especially in property, is more than just about capital, right? So there are certain skills that are required. What role does TUHF play in ensuring that these entrepreneurs are equipped with the right skills for them to be able to do exactly that? I mean, some of the things you're mentioning are soft skills that people just need to have, but a lot of people don't have them.
Yeah. So we have a comprehensive training program, which obviously teaches the hard skills. So it's a program called TUHF Program for Property Entrepreneurship that is accredited and facilitated by the University of Cape Town. So it teaches the hard skills: property management, property development, property law, tax, construction, town planning, etc. All the hard skills that a person needs to equip them to sort of understand the journey ahead. But we also provide one-on-one mentorship. We match them with a mentor who then can sit with them to deal with their unique, for 3 months, with their unique requirements and needs. That is also usually more on the technical side of things, how to manage SaaS and how to manage your maintenance program, etc. But the mentorship program is then able, because it's a one-on-one thing between the mentor and the client, we find that there's a lot more conversation around soft skills that comes in, where, the mentor might be able to pick up that you seem to lack ability to deal with your tenants in a way that, commands respect, or that ensures that your tenants are able to stay for longer because they feel seen, etc. So, they then can have those conversations. But we also have networking sessions that we organize for our clients to meet each other, because we find that the best way to learn is peer-to-peer. It's when you are sitting with someone who's walking the same journey as you, who has walked those, felt those battle scars, and is willing to share what not to do and what to do. So it's most times our clients, when they come back to us with positive feedback, is after networking to say, thank you for introducing me to client X, because from their experience on how they managed a fire issue, because these things happen in their buildings, I now know what I need to do to ensure I don't experience the same thing. So we have those 3 things: formal training, TPPE with UCT, mentorship with a mentor who has worked in banks and in property for many years, as well as networking sessions between clients so that they can share notes.
So a lot of the projects that your entrepreneurs do are mostly in, I would say, underdeveloped areas or decaying areas, and you see potential there. So how do you ensure that you balance profitability and social impact in the projects that you are doing? Because I see there's a lot of social impact around most of them.
Yeah. So we wouldn't finance a project, as I said earlier, that's not able to wash its own face. So it should be able to carry its own costs.
That's on the profitability
That's
side.
the profitability side.
Yeah.
So that's the balancing. But the social impact comes naturally because of the location of these developments. They're located in an inner city, in a township, where the need for affordable rental housing is deep, where people want to be close to work, where people in townships want to be close to community networks, so that if we are merekong during holidays, they can leave their child with a neighbor or a relative who lives down the street. So the social impact, and also obviously the contribution to regeneration, and in townships, the contribution to the development of townships so that it has better assets. So those social benefits usually come naturally from the location of the projects. But our mission has always been, if you can't make money from a project, then you can't have social impact. Because if you don't have money, you can't do any good. You have to be able to have money to do good. So
guys, if you don't have money, you can't do any good. You must have money so you can do some good.
It's like when, imagine unale 20 rand and someone comes, and the person says, please nkadime 15 rand. Obomoneya 15 rand when you go home, your daughter has no bread to eat. Is that doing good?
That's not doing
good. Yeah, you have to first take care of the business before you can extend
But I've got a question. When you spoke about especially the township, there's an issue that I've seen of zoning, that entrepreneurs might have the entrepreneurial spirit to want to develop townships. But you find that townships hardly get the right zoning in place, and municipalities they're rigid when it comes to zoning issues in the township. You might have a property, you can have 20 units there, but you'll never have it properly zoned. Is there an institutional way in which you are playing a role to solve that specific issue?
Yeah, that is a very good question. And it's an unfortunate situation in that most townships in South Africa are hungry for development. And I always say when I speak to government officials in the planning departments, to say these developments are happening with or without you. So people are building every day, whether they have a plan approved or not.
Whether they have zoning or not.
Whether they have zoning or not.
Yeah.
And they are building on building lines, on boundary lines. They're not doing things correctly. They're loading the infrastructure, and you are none the wiser. The best thing is for you to allow it in a way that you can control. We, for instance, as a formal funder, can't fund a development that is not having the rights to build. Right to build meaning it's zoned properly and your plans are approved by the municipality, and that at the end you are able to get an occupational certificate. The reason for that is that you then are able to insure your asset and you are able to enjoy the capital appreciation that comes from a property that's compliant.
But there's a dead end there.
Yes. And that's where we come in to try and advocate with the different local governments. In the city of Cape Town, we have had progress to date because we have partnered with civil society organizations to say to the political principals in the city of Cape Town, as well as the bureaucrats, the administrators, to say, you have to do something about this because people are building anyway. They were willing to listen. And today there's a bylaw that has been put out that tries to give these rights in townships around Cape Town to enable the densities that make financial sense for entrepreneurs to build in those areas, but that ensures that it's controlled and is known by the city. So the city of Cape Town did very well from our advocacy and lobbying in that respect. But city of Joburg was, I think, a leader in this, because if you look at Soweto, for instance, already in 2015, it's already zoned Res 3. It allows for those densities, but what they are now starting to realize,
not Tembisa or Davidton?
I wanted to come to that.
Yeah.
What they didn't realize is that, all this Res 3, what happens to parking and roads?
Yes.
Now they're starting to say, let's deal with consent, etc., for parking, because that seems to be an issue. But in Soweto, we've been able to fund a lot of entrepreneurs because Res 3 allows for a medium density structure, which is more, from a feasibility point of view, makes more sense because you can get anything between 10, 15 units instead of only 4.
And get parking relaxation or?
Yeah, but now they're starting to I think, start to want specific consent around parking, but we're still watching the space. But
where are people going to get parking?
But Ekurhuleni is another story altogether. They are willing, you speak to the officials in the development planning unit, they're willing to look at it, but they're not moving with the necessary speed. We had one development that we financed in Davidton. It took 2.5 years just to get the rezoning approved. You can imagine the holding costs for that entrepreneur who's a small developer starting out. Now you have to pay, because you own the land now. You bought the property, pay rates and taxes, but you're not making income from the property, because we wouldn't allow them to start building until the rezoning is approved and the plans are approved, etc. So it took, and then Tembisa, you literally can't do anything in Tembisa and Vosloorus because the scheme
is... finance 2 of my properties.
Yeah, because the scheme is, but people build.
Town planning scheme.
People in Vosloorus and Tembisa build with or without us, and that's why we go to the city and speak to them about this concept of lockout. Because if you look at it,
locked out, yeah,
where formal institutions like ourselves are locked out of that market, so we are unable.
You can't make money now.
We can't finance the entrepreneurs who are needing this support simply because we can't do things illegally. Because imagine they are very nervous to go and pursue you on your own as an entrepreneur trying out, and him and me in our individual capacities. But if a formal institution was known to have financed those, they will make an example of us. So obviously we are locked out. They will come for the institution. Right. So we are locked out, so we can't finance.
Bigger fish to fight with.
Yes, exactly. So we don't finance simply because we don't want to take that risk, but also because we are a law-abiding company. We want to do things properly to make sure, but also it makes no sense for us to finance a client for a building that they can't sell it for value because they're not compliant. Because it's to build 10 units, but that original structure was supposed to be a 2-bedroom house. The market is only going to pay you for 2-bedroom house.
2-bedroom house
until you have compliance for the 10 units.
Yeah.
You see, so that's the trick.
That's unfortunate. But as a woman in a leadership role, what have been some of the challenges you faced and how have you overcome them? I mean, I've heard some of the challenges you faced as an institution, but I want to come back to you and say, man, you've played a leadership role in institutions. What are some of the challenges you think you faced over the years?
Sure. I think that, some of them are real challenges, but maybe most of them are perceived challenges. More in your mind, you go in there and you're already yourself feeling that you are being questioned because you're a woman. So I think that as women, because I think women by nature, we're perfectionists. We like to do things properly. We want to make sure that, the right boxes are ticked. So you overthink the issues before there are actual issues. So you think, oh, these guys are dismissing me before they've actually even thought that you are, a female leader. They're not looking at you as a female leader. You're just a colleague. That way. So I think there's also that sentiment where we overthink things, but there's real challenges that, I know I have faced going to a construction site, for instance, and it's mainly men who are the professionals, the quantity surveyor, the structural engineer, and the contractor. And you are coming in there as a woman wanting progress report, and then until they realize that you are the one who has to sign off the payment for the next phase, they can be dismissive. They're not really wanting to engage you. So they'll talk to your junior who is male because they think he's the one who's a decision maker. And then quickly they realize, no, actually, we won't get our next payment. That's the person who's deciding. And then you see the attitudes changing. I have experienced that a couple of times on a construction site where, you can see the attitude is, what do you know? This is a men's thing. You are a woman.
World.
Yeah. So you get that. But I do think that most of the issues are more our own fears as women than actual real experiences, without underplaying the real because the real experiences are there. The issues of, are women being paid the same as men for the same job? We ensure, for us it's a rule, same pay for similar kind of work. But I know I have people, friends and colleagues who have worked in different industries who have left simply because they know someone who came who's male after them,
offered
more for less work or similar work. So those things, we can't dismiss them. And in construction sites, I've had young women come to me and complain about sexual harassment. It's the truth. It happens. People, you go to site and, comments are being made about how you look in these safety clothing. So there is a lot of sexual harassment, I think, that happens, but goes under the radar in construction sites because people simply don't report it enough because it doesn't lead to actual physical touching. But the comments and the, just the emotional stress of it is real. for young ladies, especially that I've spoken to who work in construction sites. But
so what advice do you give the young ladies then? Because that are in either governance, entrepreneurship.
It's a difficult one. I always say, for me, I find that your work speaks for itself. So if you are consistent in the quality output or in the quality of your work and what you produce, people will naturally respect you. So focus on doing the right things at the right times. And also, I always say to our portfolio managers who are female, who are starting out, or a PRC, project review consultant who works at a site, the first time, second time, third time you go into a site and you're uncomfortable, don't feel shy to ask a male colleague to go with you. Doesn't make you small. It just means you are just being cautious and taking a little bit of security to ask a colleague to say, can you go with me to a site, to this site for the first? Because after the third or so time, you've now developed your own rhythm in that site and they know you and then you can go on your own. But sometimes there's nothing wrong with taking extra precaution. But I find that sometimes, women think, but it makes me look weak. I'm now looking like I'm asking for security. That's fine. You are asking for security. Ask for it. Ask your male colleagues to accompany you. And most times the male colleagues are willing to say, okay, fine, I will go with you for that site inspection. So so for me, it's about just remaining real in being the fact that you are female. So if you are afraid, you are afraid. Ask for help. But also ensure that your work speaks for itself. I always find nothing gives you respect and gives you respect quicker than when your work and the quality of your work is consistent, it's dependable, and people can rely on your output.
Yeah. So how do you see the role of corporate social responsibility evolving in the industry?
That topic is a difficult one in that I think that organizations do it sometimes for Mandela Day type of.
I feel like it is for Mandela Day. Yeah.
For soup kitchen activities, etc. I don't think that's what it was meant for. I don't think social corporate responsibility is for you showing up in a community and giving shoes once a year or giving sanitary pads once a year. I think it's about your investment in that community. So for us, yes, we do have a CSI program where we go and fund a school in an area where we finance, or fund a youth program in a school, in an area where we finance. But I think the real impact, the real social responsibility or social investment of our company is in the fact that we invest in underserved and underfunded communities and underbanked entrepreneurs. Because that's where the real impact is, where your actual job is about changing the community where you're funding.
So looking at the next 5 to 10 years and looking at entrepreneurs that are in the property space, where do you think the space is headed? When you look at what it looks like now and what it could be in the next 5 to 10 years, especially for entrepreneurs that are starting out in the property industry?
Yeah. I think that is going to be an interesting space of less of these mega developments. One big developer coming and building 400 units. I think we're going to see more and more competition, which is healthy for local economic development, where we have 100 entrepreneurs doing 5 different small projects. And when those are put together, they become big. So if you come, you do your 10, I do my 5, she does her 20, he does his 50. The competition and the quality of those will be much better in my view, because then there are more players in the space, which means tenants have more choice, which forces all the players to keep innovating and pushing their game, but also brings in more people to be involved in long-term asset building, because property is the only, at least maybe I'm biased because I'm in the property space, is the only asset I know that's tangible, that you can touch, that your daughter in 20 years can go and touch that building and say, this is my dad's property. it appreciates in value if you take care of it. If obviously you have your compliances in place, you ensure it, you service your fire equipment every year as needed, you ensure that, cracks are attended to, that you move it with the times, it can give you the returns over time. And I think if we can see more people, especially in inner cities and townships or in underserved communities, being involved in property, I think that it will be an exciting space.
Okay. So, okay, we'll pause a little bit. Okay, done. So, with the challenges that South Africa faces economically, right? How do you see TUHF's role evolving in the future to continue to support entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I don't know if we can do anything differently from what we already do. We believe that macroeconomic growth, so growth at a national level, South Africa to be able as a country to grow economically, you need to do things sustainably at a local level. And that's where we play. We play at very micro levels with developers, as I say, doing small developments, many of them being able to, develop 10 units, 5 units, 20 units, shops at the bottom. Some are now starting to put offices on the first floor, residential on the second floor, and retail on the ground floor, mixed use developments at a local level. I think it's the only answer to get macroeconomic growth. You can't get growth here if it's not happening here at a local level. So I think that if we support in our communities, and it's very slow, it's very thankless, you don't see it. I mean, in this country, we like big projects, Cosmos City, Sky City, they'll say I don't know how many units are in Sky City. Nothing wrong with those developments. They're interesting and attractive. Government will go there and make a fuss. There's a big development that has come. They never actually pay attention to the efforts happening at a micro level that actually have more impact. I always make the point, we are as old as the social housing program, TUHF, in South Africa, because we started in about 2003. I think social housing started maybe a year before that as a program. And we have developed about 50,000 units with our micro developers, financed 50,000 units. Social housing is sitting at about maybe 28, 30,000. I can't remember.
Double the work, double the effort.
Almost.
Yes.
But ours, because it's with many micro developers doing small projects, it's not easy to see. But it's easy to see a social housing development that has 300 units there and 400 there, 1,000 there, because it seems big. But if you put it together, it's actually smaller impact compared. So I'm not saying social housing is bad. I think it's necessary. And I always make the point to Shra, for instance, to say the one impact that they're going to be able to make is if they start coming to inner cities to regenerate inner cities. Use the existing infrastructure in inner cities and bring social housing in inner cities at scale. But obviously, sometimes it's easier to do greenfields at the outskirts of the city, and people now have to commute for a cost from those back to the city. So if we can get a balance between that investment in the outskirts and bring a lot more of it closer to the center, I think between private sector and government efforts, we can actually do much more.
So we're drawing to a close, but there's something I've noticed about you. You're very grounded. And it makes me wonder, what are the core values that have driven you and that continue to drive you and that you continue to live by, especially in your career, leadership, or family?
It's just doing my best. I don't try to be what I'm not. So I come every day with the intention to say, how do I leave this space better than I found it? So if I go to a township, if I go to the inner city, if I meet you as an entrepreneur who comes to seek finance from us and start a development in a particular corner of Orlando West, my mind is always saying, how do we together leave that space, leave your future better than we found it? So if we focus on that to say, how do we work with what we have now so that it's better tomorrow is for me what drives me. And it's the best we can do. It's just like, getting young people coming to work for you. They come, they're nervous, it's their first job, they're from university, and you can see the nerves. The issue is, how do you spot that potential to say, how do I work with you for the strengths that I see in you? And how do we work together to address any potential weaknesses that we've identified so that tomorrow you are better than you are today so that you can lead tomorrow? So the idea is, how do you see, again, to our thing, potential in places where, or in people where it's not always immediately visible? Because, and for me, it's about that. But also, obviously, it's the things we discussed earlier. It's about doing the right things, being ethical. I find that these days, maybe it's because of we haven't had enough consequence for things that have gone in ways that we don't necessarily like as a country. So people, we hear about corruption, this and that, and we don't see people being arrested. We don't see consequence for bad behavior. And that's why I think it festers almost. It's about how do we start regenerating a moral fiber in our from our homes, with our kids, to say, always take the honest, straightforward road. Doesn't always pay. You might not make money from it, but you sleep much better at night because you've done the right thing.
Sure. So what can we expect, from you and from TUHF in the next coming years? I mean, there should be plans that you guys are having.
Yeah.
And of course, you said your plans when it comes to redevelopment, regeneration, that's not going to change. But what else can we expect in terms of new initiatives, new projects?
Yeah.
What are you excited about that you can share with us?
It's definitely, as I said, no money, no mission. So if we don't make money as a company, we are unable to invest in more entrepreneurs, in more townships, in more inner cities. So it's about growing our loan book. So currently, as a group, our loan book is just about maybe under 4 billion. And we want in the next few years to grow our loan book to 10 billion. So if you see there, it says impact through scale. Yeah. So we can't have impact if we don't have scale. So we have to support more entrepreneurs, more areas, more townships. Currently, we are not financing in Mpumalanga, Northwest, and Limpopo, simply because those economies are single sector economies, and we like metros and areas that are multi-sector economies. And it's about how do we then support more areas in places where we are currently invested, and how do we continue to explore possibilities in provinces we might not be currently financing, to say what's possible there. But we think that the model that we are supporting, or it's the entrepreneur developing in an inner city, won't change. People come to us and say, why don't you do home loans? We say we don't have a skill for home loans, but who knows? In future, it might be a thing that we support someone just to buy a house for themselves to use. We're not in that space. We finance entrepreneurs who are in the business of running rental housing properties so that they can make income from that to be able to service us. If we do a home loan, we have to rely on your personal income from wherever you are employed. It's a different product altogether. But who knows? Down the line, we might do different things, but that's not the plan now. The plan is to get to a 10 billion book in the next few years.
Sure. Now we're looking forward to seeing more of that work. But before we close, there is a young person looking at you through that camera. Mm-hmm. They could be black, they could be white, they could be Indian, they could be Chinese, and they could be saying, I hear you, but you don't know what I'm going through. Knowing what you know now, and knowing for a fact that you have been young before, what advice would you have either to them or to your younger self that you think would have carried you through?
Sure. I think is to take the risks that you are afraid to take. So So I was talking to one colleague recently brilliant young person who just joined us and got offered something else quickly and needed to make a choice. Do I stay or do I go? So my question to him was, what would you do if you weren't afraid of a decision that is clear in your head? So if there's always an instinctive option that you have, and normally we are afraid to take that because you are asking yourself, will that new place be stable? Will they pay me on time? Whatever. But instinctively, you feel that it's a suitable option for you. So if you were not led by fear of the unknown, what would you do? Would you go today and decide to leave all of this and go open a coffee shop because that's what you're passionate about? Would it be to take all your savings and take your family on a trip overseas because you want to see that particular country you want to go to? I don't know. Don't do that, by the way. Don't take all your savings and go somewhere. But the point is that as human beings, what are the things that are out there that we could explore and see and grow from if we weren't afraid of the unknown?
Sure.
And I think most of the time I'm always a cautious thing. As I say, as women, I think it's an instinctive thing, especially when you have babies. You make sure that everything is done correctly because you don't want your child's school fees to be compromised, So, the realities are that the realities will come and you'll have to consider those with a sober mind. But maybe sometimes just take that small risk. So mine, I always say to people, the biggest one is if I could go back in time, I probably would have taken more speaking opportunities. Go out there and have your voice heard. Practice, because practice makes perfect. Then you don't have this stage fright when you have to go, and because it doesn't matter what you know technically in any job if you are unable to communicate it to the world. So to my younger colleagues now, I tell them all the time, take any opportunity you have to just speak, to just be out there, to just be seen, and practice that skill. It doesn't matter you're an introvert or whatever. You have something to say. You have something that people want to hear. Just go out there and say it.
Wow. So beautifully said and so beautiful. It's a beautiful closing in my opinion. And thank you so much for giving us your time. I know how busy you are. So on behalf of all the entrepreneurs and young people that are watching, I would like to say thank you, Mrs. Netshitenzhe. And I wish you all the best with the future, with everything that you want to achieve in transformation and ensuring that more people have access to the property industry and to entrepreneurship. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
It is more than just money.
It is more than just money, isn't it? Thank you. Thank you so much. Any closing words? Anything you'd like to say before I close?
No, not really. Just thank you for the opportunity to be interviewed. Obviously, as I say, I like the name of your program. It's more than just money because that's telling, but it is about money. But it's more than just it. So make the money, but also make sure that you leave better than you found.
Wow. Amazing. Guys, I told you that we dive into conversations with industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and change makers who are shaping the future of business and investments in South Africa and abroad. Thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please click on that subscribe button, click on that notifications bell so that you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. From my team and I, broadcasting from Johannesburg, South Africa, at the Town Urban Housing Finance Corporation offices. We'll see you in the next episode. It's more than just money. Ciao, ciao.